Interview with Marco Rubio is coming up, but joining me now is Democratic Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Republican Senator Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania. You all have put together this bill, which includes, among other things, a way to expand background checks to gun shows. When does it go on the floor, and do you have the votes?
Well, we expect to vote this week. It's not certain as to exactly when. I think Wednesday is probably the most likely day for a vote for the Manchin-Toomey alternative to the existing language in the underlying bill. I think it's an open question as to whether or not we have the votes. I think it's going to be close.
What we're asking for, Candy, is just for our colleagues to read it. We've sent it to all of them. It broke down. We give an outline of it, but it's a bill that basically looks at how do we treat our veterans and make sure they're treated the way they should be treated, with the respect and dignity. How we basically look at violence and commission on mass violence, expertise in mental illness, and why we don't do more. This bill basically, if you're a criminal and if you've been mentally adjudicated, you might not like it. And that's all we're saying. At gun shows and internet sales, commercial transactions, is that you should not be able to buy a gun if you've been one of those two categories.
As both of you know, as folks who have had strong backing by the National Rifle Association in the past, there is still huge resistance in the sense that people think, oh, that, you know, you expand background checks, the next thing you know, they're going to come back and do this in the federal registry, which is explicitly banned under your bill. But there's just this feeling that the federal government this is just the tip of the iceberg. And I wanted to read you something that Senator Chris Murphy said. This was quoted in a New York Times column by Maureen Dowd, in which he said, "You are not going to disenfranchise the NRA overnight. I think ultimately we will get the assault weapons banned, because I don't think this is the last time a man will walk into a crowded place with an AR-15. That kind of, go ahead.
Well, first of all, let me be very clear. Senator Manchin and I are not interested and not willing to support infringing the legitimate rights of law-abiding citizens. This is about whether or not it's reasonable to try to make it more difficult for dangerous people for whom it's already illegal for them to have weapons to obtain them. And I think that's a very reasonable thing. Now, there's some people that do want to infringe on Second Amendment rights. I won't be part of that, but I will be part of trying to make sure that criminals and dangerously mentally ill people have a harder time getting guns.
But you understand the fear that's out there.
Sure. It's the unknown and the factor there's lack of trust. And Pat and I both coming from a gun culture, both NRA, both gun people ourselves who own guns and hunt and go out into the woods and enjoy it all. If you're a law-abiding gun owner, you're going to like this bill. We've clarified a lot of things. You know, when people look at you, Candy, and they think, why do you own a gun? Like something's wrong with you? This basically puts it in the proper contents people have been trying to do for years. And all we're asking for is for them to read it.
Have the events over the past 3 or 4 months, while Congress and the President and everyone has sort of wrestled with what to do, has it changed your mind about the National Rifle Association? We had Governor Malloy on last week, and he called Wayne LaPierre a clown, a circus clown. Do you all feel differently about the NRA and its tactics now than you did prior to all of this?
What we're seeing is the same as we're seeing in the political arena, whether you're Democrat or Republican, whether you're elected or you're running for an office. They're getting caught by different other extreme groups, really extreme groups that are putting out falsehoods and just outright lies that are not even addressed in this bill. We have had so much protection in this bill, and we're asking people to read it. It's a shame that a nationally organized organization such as NRA, and we've talked to them. They're my friends. I've worked with them. My door's still open. We want, you know, if they're not going to be for the bill, we just agree to disagree. But there's things in this piece of legislation that they've been working for many, many years to get, and it's here.
And have you changed your mind about the NRA and its tactics?
No, I don't think. You know, I think this debate in some ways is underscoring just the extent to which there's a polarization in our society, a political polarization. The acrimony that's gotten into politics is manifesting itself in this debate. I think that's unfortunate. But I really believe strongly, as Senator Manchin said, if people will actually read the bill, which has been posted online since Thursday evening. We'll probably have a vote on Wednesday. It's been available. It will have been available for a week. I think they'll see it's a very reasonable, common sense measure to keep guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them.
Let me also talk to you a little bit about the specifics of one thing. And it does allow the transfer of a gun within a family.
Right.
It does allow gun sales within a family, but there's also something that says private sales. So if I own a shotgun and my neighbor, and I want to sell it, my neighbor comes to me and says, oh, I know a guy that's looking for a shotgun. Can I sell that shotgun to the neighbor's friend without a background check under your bill?
Transactions are exempted.
Is that a private transaction?
That's a private transaction. If it's commercial transaction or commercial establishment such as a gun show, if you're going to a gun show, then there should be a background check. Here's the current law. Current law is this. If you go to a gun store, you have to have a background check, and the gun store keeps it. If you go to a gun show today and you're a licensed dealer, you still do the same thing. We're treating everybody the same. If you buy online, I buy from a gun in Pennsylvania, and I'm in West Virginia.
But you can say, under this bill, I can sell my shotgun to anyone I wanted, and that is
private transactions.
Okay.
Private transactions, law-abiding citizens, you know, absolutely.
Okay. The other thing is, you all have, do you still, even though you have this bill out there, understand when folks look at this and say, no, we've got to control those private sales as well, because if you don't know the background of the guy you're selling to.
Well, I understand, but I just disagree. I think we need to strike a balance here, strike a reasonable balance that is not too onerous. The vast majority of sales are commercial in nature, and they're happening either with dealers or at gun shows. Those would be captured subject to a background check, which 94% of which are completed in 3 minutes. It's really very reasonable, and it would capture the vast majority of transactions.
I want to move to the politics of this, some of which actually were touched upon last night in a Saturday Night Live skit. I don't know if you all have been able to see it, but I wanted to play just a bit of it.
These men risked everything for this bill. I mean, Senator Manchin represents West Virginia, and he's proposing gun reform. He's going to lose his job. And Senator Toomey, this man is a Republican who is willing to make just the slightest compromise on gun control. He's going to lose his job, too.
Either one of you worried about any kind of challenge, primary or general?
Let me just say, and I know Pat and I have talked, we came here to do something. You know, we came here to make a difference. If you would have met with the families, the strongest people I've ever met with, the families of the Newtown victims, they never asked for anybody to take their guns away. They never asked for repeal of the Second Amendment. They said, we're gun owners. We respect and honor all that. We know, and they'll even say, we know that this bill that you're working on would not have saved our children. We know that. But it might save somebody else's child. I mean, when you talk about people, if we just had half the courage they had, Candy, just half the courage. So yes, I came to do something, and I want to do something.
In 1999, I supported expanding background checks. I just think it makes common sense, and I'll just let the political chips fall the way they fall.
Senator Pat Toomey from Pennsylvania, Senator Joe Manchin, West Virginia. Thank you both for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
When we